Chapter 3 A Good Friend. When I woke up the next morning, I found Queequeg's arm wrapped around me like he was sleeping with his wife. Very uncomfortable with that thought, I poked him awake. He grunted, threw away his arm, and sat stiffly looking at me. He stood outstretched and courteously gestured that he'd change first and leave the room so that I might change comfortably. I felt guilty for being rude while he was being so polite. He put on his tall beaver hat and then his boots. He put on his pants, then shrugged into his shirt. Next, he took a wet piece of soap and began lathering his face. I wondered what he'd used to shave when he walked over to the harpoon and removed its head. He sharpened it on his boot and began scraping his cheeks with it. I was quite amazed by his morning rituals. Once he was ready, he proudly marched out of the room. During breakfast, I was surprised to see that those at the table were quiet. I honestly expected a loud, boisterous group of sailors exchanging seafaring stories. Instead, I found a table full of whalemen, from chief mates to harpooners to shipkeepers, silently eating. After breakfast, I found myself alone in the public room with Queequeg. I saw him lift a heavy book and go through it in his strange language. He whistled after counting every 50 pages. As I saw him, I realized that he didn't mingle with the other sailors. Here was a man who was 20,000 miles away from home, in a place as foreign to him as the planet Jupiter. Yet, he was always at ease with himself, so I felt myself drawn to him. I tried to talk to him. When he asked if I would be sharing the room tonight as well, I said yes. He looked pleased. I took the book he was holding and tried to explain to him what the printing meant and what the pictures described. I soon engaged his interest. We managed to talk about the different sights in town and even shared a social smoke between us, with him passing his pipe to me and me back to him. We sat there puffing the pipe in companionable silence. After our smoke, he clasped his hands around my waist, pressed his forehead against mine, and said that we were married, which in his country's terms meant that we were friends for life. I felt a bit awkward at that, since here in America we don't trust people that easily. After another friendly smoke and supper, we went back to the room. He gave the shrunken head to me as a gift. He rummaged under his bag and took out $30 in silver, which he promptly divided in half, saying one half was mine. I refused, obviously, but he picked up the change and forced it into my pocket. He then took out the hunchback idol and motioned for me to come join him worshiping it. Therein lay the problem. As I was a good Christian, I knew that idol worship was against my religion. Then I wondered why God would be jealous of a piece of wood. So I lit the fire, burned the biscuit, and offered it to the idol. Bowed down once or twice and went to bed. The next morning, Queequeg told me all about himself. Queequeg, born in Kokovoko, small E island in South Pacific. He started. Queequeg, father, king. His uncle, high priest. Queequeg become king after old father dies. But Queequeg have to see Christian world first and bring back great improvements to his people. Apparently, when a Sag Harbor ship visited his father's bay, Queequeg begged the captain to allow him passage to the New World, but because the ship was already full with crew members, he wasn't allowed on board. The captain denied his request, so Queequeg took his canoe and paddled to a distant strait, one he knew the ship must pass through once he left the island. Once there, he waited silently until the ship glided smoothly through the strait. He jumped to the side of the boat and vaulted himself over the ship's rail. The captain tried in vain to throw him overboard, and even whipped him with the cutlass. But Queequeg didn't budge. The captain finally relented. He told Queequeg to make himself at home, even though this young prince never even saw the captain's cabin. He was put with the sailors and was made into a whaleman. He told me that he wanted to learn practices from the Christians' arts to make his people happier than they already were. But alas, the practices of whalemen soon convinced him that the Christian men could be quite miserable and cruel, more so than his father's heathens. Being someone who idolizes others, he continued to live with them, dress like them, and even talk like them. I asked him indirectly if he'd stayed away from home long enough that it was time to head back. His father might be dead or near to being that now. He told me that he didn't want to go back yet. He wanted to go out to sea. Hearing this, I told him my plans of whaling and sailing out to Nantucket. He immediately decided to accompany me on my voyage so that he could share every aspect of it with me. His story ended with the pipe's last puff. He embraced me, pressed his forehead against mine, blew out the light, and went back to sleep again.